All right. What's up guys, Frank here from the Gear Couch with a video. I'm not gonna say another video because, full disclosure, I wasn't actually planning to do more videos on this channel. Other maybe than some stuff around my pedals, demos, that sort of thing. But last week Fender launched the Tone Master Pro and it kind of catched my interest for a couple of reasons. A, I really like Fender amps and I have used a ton of different Fender amps around my time as a guitar player. B, I have extensive knowledge and insight into some of the modeling units out there. I've used an XFX2 for a long time. I recently had the chance to also work with an FM3 from Fractal Audio and test it out. And I even had the chance to work with the Quad Cortex and test it out a little bit. Plus, I've been working at Positive Grid for almost 2 years and got some good insight into how the development of modeling products work. Plus, I'm a pedal builder as well, so it kind of seems like a good opportunity to see how well the unit works with external effects and how good some of the internal effects pedals hold up to the originals. So then, here it is, the Tone Master Pro from Fender. Short disclaimer, the Tone Master Pro was not provided to me by anyone or sent out to me by Fender. My channel is way too small for this. I purchased it myself and after a testing period I'm going to decide if I return it or keep it. I'm going to let you know maybe at the end of the video or a little bit later. In this video I'm also going to talk about some of the differences between the Tone Master Pro and similar units on the market so that you know what each modeler brings to the table. I won't be doing a sonic comparison since I do not own the other units that I'm going to compare it to feature-wise. Fractal Audio, Line 6, Neural DSP. If you want me to do a sonic comparison, I'm happy to do that. Just send me over your devices and we can make it happen. Okay, so to do a fair comparison between the Tone Master Pro and some of the other units, we need to rule out a few units first because of different features. For example, we can't compare it to a Kemper because the Kemper is basically a capturing unit, not a modeling unit. And the Fender Tone Master Pro doesn't have some sort of capture feature at this point, so we can't really compare it. So the units I'm going to compare it to are the Line 6 Helix Floor, the Fractal Audio TM9 Turbo, the Neural Quad Cortex, and as an honorable mention we are going to use the Headrush Prime as well. It has a different price point and it's kind of inferior in my opinion as regards to modeling. It's a lot bigger and heavier, plus it has an expression pedal on which the Tone Master Pro does not have. Alright, let's look at pricing first. The Tone Master Pro enters the market at 1899 euros, which is most likely the same in US dollars. The Helix Floor is the cheapest, or most affordable unit of our comparison at $15.99. Then we have the Fractal Audio FM9 Turbo, which is at $2,299, and the neural DSP Quad Cortex, which just lowered in price, sits at $1,699. Now let's look at some of the specifications, and we'll start with connections. The neural Quad Cortex comes with 2 inputs, 2 effects loops, 4 outputs, MIDI in and out, expression pedal and USB connectors, but comes with, and that's kind of a bummer to me, especially, I mean, we're in 2023. It comes with an external power supply, which is kind of a miss in my opinion. They probably wanted it to be more compact, which is fine, and it is a compact unit, but I think an external power supply is a big miss. The Fractal Audio FM9 Turbo comes with 3 inputs, which you can use for the 4-cable method, or you can use 2 of them as an insert. It comes with 4 outputs. It comes with digital outs, headphone output, MIDI in and out, obviously, that should be a standard. It comes with 3 expression pedal inputs as well. And it has an internal power supply, which is great. The Line 6 Helix floor comes with guitar input, auxiliary input, 4 effects loops, 2 outputs. It also has a microphone input. It has a headphone out. It has a Variax input, but that's more specific to some of Line 6's Variax guitars. It's not a bonus point in this comparison. It comes with headphone outs obviously. It has digital ins and outputs, USB, and also has an internal power supply. Now, the Tone Master Pro also comes with an instrument and a mic input. It also has 4 effects loops. You can use 2 of them in stereo, meaning that if you have a stereo effect that you want to loop in, you can just combine these 2 effects loops. It has an aux in as well to use for playbacks and stuff like that. Headphones, 2 expression pedal inputs, a toe switch input. It has amp control, which comes in handy when, let's say, you're using the 4-cable method and you also want to switch functions on the amplifier. That makes sense. Comes with MIDI in and out, has a USB-C input and a micro SD. And it also has an internal power supply. So essentially, if we look at the concept of the Tone Master Pro, it kind of combines what the Quad Cortex and the Helix floor bring to the table. The Quad Cortex in terms of the touch screen, so the user interface, the interaction with the user, since it also has the encoders, so the Footswitches where you can change values. In comparison to the Quad Cortex, it also has the little displays above the Footswitches, so you actually know immediately what you're changing. The other thing that it kind of brings in from the Helix floor is the amount of connections. There's a huge amount of connections to, well, combine it with maybe via 4-cable method, or if you want to use your external effects. If we look at the inside feature set, I mean, we can certainly compare the amount of amps, effects, cabinets of all of those devices. Just looking at that comparison, would most likely crown the FM9 the winner, since it features more than 100 amps, plus different channels of each amp, more than 2,000 impulse responses, a ton of effects, and so on. However, the point of this video is more on what the Tone Master Pro does different or better, or how the interaction with the player looks like. Also, who is ever going to need or use 100 amps? If you do, let me know in the comments, and also tell me why. Apart from that, average Joe, if there is something like average Joe in the guitar world, now that I'm thinking about it, would most likely play an amp, maybe some pedals, and be fine with that. He wouldn't even look at a device like this. Average Joe Plus, let's call him Average Joe Plus, might consider looking into units, like the ones we just mentioned, and needs a straightforward way to access and edit. And then we have Super Joe. Super Joe is the person who is very, very open to experiment with different sounds, and then might actually connect the device with a computer, look at an editor, and do his thing. All right, take 2. Alright, I've moved over to my work desk so I can show you what's going on the inside of the Tone Master Pro. Pro tip, when you receive the unit, follow the instructions that the touchscreen is going to give you. You need to update the firmware, otherwise the unit won't be recognized by your Mac or PC. And it's actually a very easy thing, and the instructions are simple and straightforward. And then when you open the editor, what you see is pretty much a one-to-one mirror of what you'd see on the touch screen, with the difference obviously that you don't have to crawl on the floor or knee while you're playing and trying things out and pushing things. And you can do that sitting, maybe your guitar in hand, and then checking out what's going on within the editor. Let's look at some of the right now included amps. The firmware had a couple of extra amps. I think some silver jubilees were included and a couple of effects. But basically, if we look at the amp, so this is an amp that I just put into one of the presets. By the way, another pro tip, the factory presets, and I say that without any disregard to the people who created the factory presets, but the factory presets are pretty terrible, to be 100% honest with you. I went up to preset 80 and I haven't found one that sounded great, in my opinion. They all sounded kind of either overloaded or they sounded, I don't know, very little organic. And also the mic choices were pretty weird. I think that at least 2/3 of all the cabinets had like the SM7B as the mic of choice, which is, I mean, it's a good microphone, but it's not a good microphone for everything. So forget about the factory presets. They're not very good. Just start your preset, start from scratch, take an amp, take a couple of pedals, and you're good to go. So basically what you see here is an overview of the grid, a couple of effects, and if we want to replace the amplifier, we get to see what's currently included. The good thing is it's kind of divided into combo amps, half stacks, amp heads, cabinets, effects, IR, so it's very well sorted. And right now included as Fender's own amps is the 59 Bassman, the 65 Princeton Reverb, the 65 Deluxe Reverb, the 65 Super Reverb, the 65 Twin, and then the Bass Breaker in 3 different kind of sensitivities, the Blues Junior and the Vibro King. Here's my first kind of critique. If we look at the 65s or the mid-60s blackface amps that are in there, yeah, that's nice. But I've looked into some of the schematics, and to be honest, the preamp on those is very, very similar. The only difference is that they each have a different power amp, and obviously they have a different speaker setup. And then if we look at the other amps, I mean, the Bass Breaker, yeah, it's a nice amp. The Blues Junior as well. The Vibro King certainly is a good amp. But when I tried the Vibro King, it didn't remind me at all to the original Vibro King that I played maybe a year ago at a friend's place. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure that it is a super accurate representation of a Vibro King. However, I'm missing some of the more exotic Fender creations. There are so many amazing amps. They could have introduced some silver face versions. They could have introduced some of the Evil Twins during the Paul Rivera, the time that Paul Rivera worked at Fender as an engineer. There's so much stuff that they could do. I really hope that in future firmware updates they fix that and they add more stuff to the table. Looking at the other amps, so if we continue with combo amps, we also have the UK30 in Brilliant and Normal, that's self-explanatory. We have the Marksman Channel 1, that's a Mesa Boogie Mark 1, and a JC Clean. That's it for combos, which is okay, but looking at what some of the other competitors have in store, it's very little, actually. It then continues with half stacks. So with half stacks, we obviously have the British Plexi, we have the 800. With the last firmware update, the Jubilee Clean Rhythm and Lead came into it. The FBE100 is obviously a Friedman BE100. That actually sounds very good. The EVH5153 Stealth, that one also sounds very good. But these are part of the Fender family, so if they sound bad, then, well, that would be a bad thing. We have the Marksman Channel 2, which is a Mark 1 Channel 2. We have the double reg and the Uber rectifier and the Uberschall from Bogner. Now, you can get all of these as amp heads only and then combine them with a different cabinet, obviously. So you can get the 59 Basement, for example, and you can get the black face amps and all the others, and then combine them with a cabinet of your liking. And at the first look, it doesn't seem like that if you choose one of the combo amps. However, if you're here at the combo in this section where you have like a detailed overview of the amp's controls and whatnot, remember there's always a second page, so you can always go to the second page. In this case, it shows you speed and intensity of the vibrato, the built-in vibrato or tremolo. Pro tip, if you go to the cabinet, and we're going to talk about the cabinet in a few seconds, when you go to the cabinet and you're like, okay, that's the only thing I can change, you can actually also change to a different cabinet within the combo amp only section. So you can also combine that with a 4x12, just so you don't have to use a cab with a with an amp head. It's not necessary. You could just stay in that section. Now, talking about the speaker cabinet and what you can do, you have a couple of positions. So you have 8 different distances per position. So here, for example, you have the cone edge with 8 different distances from 0 inches to 6 inches. The same for the cone, for the cap edge, and for the cap. You can then choose if you want the mic to be on or off axis, which makes a difference in a lot of ways. And then you have a low and a high cut, which in most cases, in none of the presets, nobody has ever touched the high cut. So it is still at 20 kilohertz. And I always bring that down immediately because sometimes you really hear some kind of weird brittle going on, especially when you are working with overdriven sounds. And that's pretty much it. Here's the big advantage of that. Some of the other units have a very complicated user interface, a very complicated way of dealing with things and changing things, and almost too many possibilities. So Fender actually narrowed it down to only a few that you can easily access, which is a big plus. All right, moving on, we can look at some of the pedals that are in here. So this is pretty much self-explanatory. That's a Mythic drive, so obviously a clon or some clon derivate, I don't know. And then this is also very well sorted. So there's like all the different stomp boxes in terms of like gain stages, drives, and boosts. And there's a good amount of them, and they explain themselves. I mean, the green box is obviously a Tube Screamer. The Nashville Overdrive is the ODR1 by Nobles. We have the Tube OD, which is probably a Chandler or something. We have some heavier drives. Then we slowly get into the fuzz territory. We have an octave fuzz. That actually sounds very, very decent. Then we go into modulation. We have choruses, a lot of choruses. We have flangers. We have phasers, tremolos, harmonic and optical. We have univibes, rotaries, vibratone. We have some delays, some with like special effects, like an auto swell delay, for example. We have some echoes. We have some memory delays, which is obviously Memory Man from Electro Harmonics. We have the space and tape delays, which are more like the Roland RE series kind of delays. We have some reverbs. We have some larger halls and plates. We have some modulated halls. We have some cloud reverb, celestial reverb. That's where you can add a certain type of modulation, or you can add like a pitch on top of things. we have a dynamic section, and where you have compressors, where you have EQs, where you have gates. Important if you're going into like the heavier sort of sounds, then gates become important. Although all of the amps also have a noise gate built in that goes from off to max. So even if you don't use a gate, the amp will most likely provide that as well, depending on your amount of distortion. And then we have some wah pedals. Obviously you need an external pedal for that, an expression pedal, and then you can assign it to a wah or a vocal wah. And then we have some pitch shifters and diatonic harmonizers, detune. So it's a fairly good amount of things. You can also use IRs, so you can use your own impulse responses that you have maybe from different collections, and you can use those with the Tone Master Pro. And then you have 4 effects loops. So you can use those 4 effects loops. 2 of the effects loops, loop 1 and 2, they are always in front of the signal chain. You can't move them within the grid. So let's say I add loop 1 here, and I confirm, I can't move that. It's always going to go back. Fender says that those are more kind of, they're more usable for gain, for gainy, for overdrives, for gain stages pretty much, for your favorite fuzz. And then you also have 2 other loops which you can combine to be a stereo loop. So if I choose loop 3 instead, then you can see I can just move that around and put it at the end wherever I want to. Now here is my here's my pet peeve with loops. I don't know what Fender did or where they looked at for inspiration, but I've been trying to use this with external pedals, some of my own creations, which I know for a fact, if I use them with a regular amp, they are super quiet. I need to really crank them up before I hear some kind of noise or hissing. As soon as you use one, like a gain, a drive or something, or a boost in whatever effects loop, if it's 1 or 2, or if it's one of the assignable, like changeable effects loops, the noise floor starts to increase immediately. And then the next thing I was looking at was like, okay, well maybe I can change the level. So when I go into preset settings, all right, so here it is. If I go to user preferences, there are a couple of things I can do here. I can back up settings to the cloud or restore them from the cloud, which is good if you lost them for some reason. You can retain the global EQ. And then you see an overview of the ins and outs, where you can put a pad, an input pad, -6 dB on the instrument input, which is good if you have a guitar with active pickups. Then obviously it might be too heavy for the input, so you can tame that down a little bit. You can adjust the mic input gain. We're not going to do that. You can adjust the line input gain. You can assign phantom power to the input, to the mic input, which is great if you're using a condenser mic or something. And then here you see, and this is like my pet peeve, loop level 3 and loop level 4. So you can change that between instrument and line, which makes sense because, you know, depending on what kind of device you're using, maybe a stereo effects pedal or something, depending on that, you might want to change the level because the output level of that respective effects unit needs that. Otherwise, it's going to overload the signal. But you can't adjust loop 1 and 2. And I think that's the reason why whenever you use an effects pedal, that is an overdrive, a boost or something, immediately you have additional noise in the signal. And you have like this kind of weird hissing going on. So my recommendation is, dear engineers at Fender, please make the loops, the inputs, the send and returns of the loops adjustable in level. The Quad Cortex actually has that, so you can actually, on a preset basis or on a scene basis, go ahead and say, now input level of the send or the return is XYZ dBs, and on the next preset it's less. That makes it possible to, let's say you have a distortion pedal in the loop, and in one preset you want it to be a little bit lower in gain. You can do that on a preset basis. Here, the whole thing is actually creating noise issues, so that's something that I definitely do not like. Moving on with user preferences, the Footswitch settings, you can pretty much choose what the Footswitch mode is going to do. So you can say I want 6 presets, I want 3 presets over 3 presets, or 3 presets over 3 effects. So it's just about the layout of the Footswitches, and that depends on your personal situation. If you want to work on a preset basis, then you just go with 6 presets. If you want it like half-half, then you do it any other way. You can choose if the tap tempo is preset based or global, the tap LED if it's on or not, and so on and so forth. The other thing you can also do is you have a global EQ here, and you have 4 user presets. I don't know when the global EQ is actually something that you would use. Maybe if you use an active monitor and you feel like the basic sound is great, but for some reason you need to adjust it to, because you can assign it to output 1 or 2. You need to adjust it in a certain way, then obviously that's a possibility. And then in the end we have the mixer. We can also access the mixer pretty easy on the unit itself. And here you can just, you know, adjust your levels, your headphones, output 1, output 2, the USB 3 and 4, that's more for reamping purposes, because you can reamp with this device. And that's pretty much it. So, conclusion, looking at the amount of amps and amount of pedals and other effects in there, there is not much in there at this point, and I'm missing some of the more exotic Fender amp models, but maybe that changes with one of the next updates. I really hope so. The other thing that we need to mention is the lack of adjustability for the loops. To me, that's a big issue, because right now, at this point, with that setup, with that firmware version, you're not able to use it with pedals. It's going to create additional noise, and nobody wants additional noise. I wasn't even able to get the noise out with one of the noise gates, neither the amp noise gate or one of the pedal noise gates inside of the unit. So, yeah.
All right, let's try this Landau-ish.
Morning. Okay, now it's official. This is actually the longest video I've been shooting ever for one product, because I wasn't able to finish it shooting in one day. And yeah, I also didn't get that much sleep last night, thanks to my son being awake at 6 o'clock wanting to play, so my eyes can tell. It wasn't the Tone Master Pro that kept me up all night, but I would like to summarize a little bit what we've learned, what I've learned in this week of extensive testing of the Tone Master Pro, and in the past 2 days shooting things and going in depth, and maybe look at some of the pros and maybe also some of the cons for the unit, and then also take a look at it from different perspectives, just to get like a fuller view, a fuller opinion on things. But let's start with the pros. On the pro side, definitely number one, the interaction with the player. This is definitely the best I've come across, because you have the touch screen, you have the encoders, and I mean, touch screens are like part of our daily lives. We all know how to handle them because they're self-explanatory. You tap a couple of things and then usually stuff works. And then also you have the encoders with the little displays above. So I found myself doing 2 or 3 things on the touch screen and then afterwards directly changing to the encoders because I like the hardware kind of feeling. And then immediately I would be where I wanted to be very, very fast. So as far as ease of use and accessibility goes, this is an A+, although I'm taking away 1 star because the touch screen is less responsive than other touch screens I've come across, and definitely less responsive than the Quad Cortex touchscreen. Sometimes you have to tap 2 or 3 times until something actually opens or changes or you get the detailed view. So, but yeah, it's something you have to live with, I guess. Pro number 2, definitely the processing power. And I'm not even talking about how crazy you can go with effects or, I mean, you probably could. I haven't tested it yet, but other people have tested it. You can cramp a lot of stuff into one preset. I'm talking more about the preset change and how that works, because it's absolutely seamless and there's no gap in between. Even some of the competitors that we've mentioned earlier in the video have issues with that, where when you change from one preset to the other, you have this little, I don't know, quarter of a second gap. Even amplifiers have it, and it bothers the crap out of me. I don't like it at all. If you change channels, that's why might be the reason I'm using 1-channel amps for the most part. You change the channels and you have this like slight gap, muted, I don't know, in between. And this shouldn't be there, and Fender actually implemented that very well, and it's a huge advantage for people who like to work with presets rather than going into Footswitch mode and activating single things. So that's well done. Number 3, the amount of connections, definitely a big plus. Fender went full on, and the scenarios for this thing are actually pretty wide. I mean, yeah, you can play this thing as a guitar player in a band. You can use this thing as a singer-songwriter, and then you can apply effects to your vocals. The same thing if you play guitar in a band and you sing, you can also use it and then apply certain processing on your vocals. Or, now that I think of it, what you could also do, let's say I play the electric guitar, my buddy plays the acoustic. What you could do is just use one device and, you know, process both instruments and send them to front of house, save space and money. Not bad. Number 4, the sound. The unit sounds great. I have nothing bad to say about the sound. It's really responsive. The amps respond in a way where, well, it's what you expect from an amp. You know, you roll down the volume, it kind of, you ease up your playing, you play like a little bit softer, and it reacts really well. So as far as, you know, doing that on the hardware side, Fender did a great job. But to put it into perspective, other competitors also do that really well. So it's nothing that, it's definitely on the pro side, but it's nothing where Fender stands apart or did something better or different, in my opinion. It's great, and it should be there to begin with, because if it wouldn't sound and feel great, then it would be a big miss. Does it sound authentic? Well, that's a different question, and it's also a very subjective thing. Something that sounds authentic or feels authentic to you might not feel and sound authentic to me. So you're gonna have to figure that out on your own and then decide if you think it feels and sounds authentic. My humble opinion is that the Fender amps in there, they're spot on. Fender did a great job, obviously, like capturing the essence of those amp models and putting them into, you know, the digital domain. I'm not 100% sure about some of the other, especially the British voiced amps or some of the US amps. The EVH, yeah, 100%, because, you know, it's part of their family. But I think that others doing a better job at capturing amps from, you know, a different heritage. All right. We also, unfortunately, have to talk about some of the negative aspects of the unit as it is right now. And I would like to start with the variety and amount of amps and cabinets included in the current firmware, and pretty much, you know, it's what was there at launch. I think it is a bit poor and almost embarrassing that there are so little amp models in there. I know that earlier in the video I said that who needs, you know, 100 amps, 300 amps, 2000 impulse responses? No one does. But then again, if you go to market with a price point of $18.99 and you want to compete with some of the big names in the industry, then you definitely need to bring your A game. And I don't see that happening, especially not if you take a couple of blackface mid-60s amps and you put them in there and they almost have a similar topology. To inflate things, no. So that is almost a fail for me. Like, you go to market and you supposedly want to compete with like some of the big names and the, you know, popular devices. That's not going to cut it. Number two, I've mentioned it earlier, but I have to mention it again because especially for me as a pedal builder, it's yeah, I don't understand it. So you go to market and you say, we have 4 effects loops and you can integrate your effects and it's going to be great. And then, at least for gain stages, the whole thing doesn't work because it creates additional noise, which you don't want. And I think that's a big fail. The lack of adjustability for the effects loops, where, I mean, the Quad Cortex has that kind of adjustability. And why would, if you go to market, you have to take a look at the competition. I really hope Fender did that and looked at, okay, so the Quad Cortex is doing that. What can we do to make this better or easier for people? But none of it is in there. Today, with that firmware, the use of any kind of boost, overdrive is pretty much impossible without creating additional noise. Who wants additional noise? No one. And in comparison, if you use the internal pedals, there's no noise. So yeah, Fender has to definitely work on that and yeah, bring additional adjustability for the effects loops. Number 3 and last point on the negative list, the unit still has a couple of bugs. I mean, it's a digital product, so if you go to market, there might be things you did not see when you did the quality testing, when you tested out things. But some of the bugs are just really stupid. For example, you can assign, in Footswitch mode, you can assign some of the foot switches to do certain functions, like switch on and off pedals, for example. And that is something, like, it depends on how you save the preset so that actually works. I found myself in a situation where I had like a preset with 2 pedals and I wanted to assign two foot switches to bypass the pedals. And then with one, it was actually working, and with the other one, every time I would switch it on, the LED would go off, because it depends on what the state of the pedal is when you save the preset, which is absolutely stupid. If the pedal is on, the LED should be on, and if the pedal is off, the LED should be off. So it's like these kind of bugs that I don't understand. Like, who tested this thing? Oh, and maybe to add on that, and that's a general advice to a lot of other guys out there who also make these types of devices. Stop overloading your factory presets, please. It's just, nobody needs 20 effects in a chain before an amplifier. Just put an amplifier in there and maybe a pedal or two, or just start with the amplifier so people have like some kind of canvas that they can paint on. But don't overload these things. It's like, as I said earlier, the factory presets in these things, in this thing, they're absolutely terrible. Okay, so let's look at the Tone Master Pro from different perspectives. Let's say you're in the market for a modeling device, and you don't want to bother with like the cheap 200-300 euro kind of Asian copies of certain devices. No, you want to go Pro League, high end. Maybe you're switching from an amp with pedals and you want a more compact setup and you want to travel lighter, etc., etc. Would I recommend buying the Tone Master Pro? Probably not, because at this point it still lacks a lot of features in comparison to the Quad Cortex, which is actually more affordable. And there are more affordable options right now, which definitely are superior in terms of features. That might change in the future, I'm not ruling that out, but at this point, you should better look at some of the alternatives, because then if you go and look into the used market and you look at some of the marketplaces where you can actually score a Quad Cortex for something like 1,200 euros or $1,200, then that definitely is a good alternative. And the Quad Cortex is a very compact unit as well, so you're also going to travel light. Perspective number 2, let's say you are already using a modeling device and you want to upgrade because you want to, take the next step in quality and all these things. I read a comment the other day on the post in Facebook where I announced I'm going to take a deeper look at this unit, where someone said, yeah, I recently purchased it and it sounds amazing, sounds phenomenal, and he made the switch from the Headrush. To me, that's a clear upgrade. Not because I don't like the Headrush, but I always found it to be inferior in terms of feeling and also the modeling quality in comparison to some of the other devices out there. So if you want to upgrade to the next thing and you trust that Fender is not going to abandon this project and is going to keep coming up with firmware updates and amps and effects and is going to add things in the upcoming future, then yeah, definitely look at it and test it out yourself. Definitely compare it with some of its competitors and then make a decision based on what you think feels and sounds right. Perspective number 3, let's say you already have a high-end modeler. Let's say you have a Quad Cortex or you have an FM9 or an FM3 or something. Would I recommend you doing the switch? No, definitely not, for all the reasons that I just mentioned before. Right now, as far as features and adjustability goes, the Tone Master Pro still has some way to go. So switching to something that actually has less features would be a step back rather than a step forward. It would not be an upgrade. It would be a change to something that, you're going to be upset about when you try to do certain things that you're used to with the Quad Cortex, with some of the other devices out there. So, before we finally hit the stop button on that camera, here are some final words and thoughts on the Tone Master Pro and digital products in general. First of all, I mean no disrespect to the people who are involved in the development of the Tone Master Pro. I think it's a great product. It feels good. It sounds good, for sure. But the advertising kind of implies that it's like the new star in the modeling, like top of the line modeling scene. And to be honest, Fender still has some way to go before, you know, they are on par with the competition for all of the stuff that I've mentioned in this video. And then the other thing, and that was really interesting because I had a conversation with a good buddy of mine the other day where we talked about digital products being released, and then I get the product and I start playing with it and I find all these bugs, and I almost feel like a beta tester. And it's something that bothers the shit out of me. It's like I'm doing the job that people inside the company should be doing so that I get a product where I'm like, amazing, everything works, that's what I would expect. But instead what happens is you put out a product that is like half ready because you have certain deadlines around the launch date and you want to get it out as soon as possible, and oh, you need to get it out before, you know, the holiday season because you want to participate. But then afterwards you get all these complaints from people where, hey, this doesn't work, the effects loop doesn't work as expected, there's this weird bug with the Footswitch mode and all these things. And then obviously you go ahead and you fix it with the next firmware update, we're going to fix it. And oh, hey, we're also going to bring 10 new amps and 20 new effects and all of that. And while that is nice and it's kind of, you know, like putting nice honey around the mouth of people, it's a thing that really bothers me because I, for example, as a pedal builder, I couldn't do that. If I make a pedal that is not 100% ready because maybe the circuit board still has issues, and I put this out and I think like, well, you know, I can fix it afterwards. I would have to take all these back because of people complaining, and then I wouldn't earn a single dime with it. So in the analog domain, we can't do these kind of things, but in the digital domain, it seems like it's almost accepted. And yeah, I'm kind of done being a beta tester. So as I said in the beginning of the video, I'm going to tell you at the end of the video if I'm going to keep the Tone Master Pro. And at this point I have to say I'm definitely going to return it. It doesn't mean that maybe somewhere along the road I wouldn't be open to maybe purchase it again, because I see that development has moved forward. But at this point I'm like, it's too much money for a product where I can get a better alternative for a more affordable price. And I'm not going to buy things because they have a certain name attached to it. If something's good, I don't care what company is making the product. I'm going to get it. So that's pretty much it. I know it's a long video, I'm sorry. There are chapters, so you can go through all the chapters if you want to, and maybe, you know, scroll through to the part that you like the most. It's a video, as I said in the beginning. I'm not sure how high my frequency is going to be in terms of videos. I promise I'm going to do better, that's for sure. But anyways, if you like that kind of content and if you would like to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell button so that you get actually a notification whenever I drop a new video. And maybe let me know in the comments what you think about the Tone Master Pro, or let me know what kind of content you would like to see, if you'd like to see content like that or other content. All right, see ya. I'm gonna finally hit the stop button on that camera.